research and development projects. We organizing meetups and workshops and consulting cases for companies. Well, I have a fresh news for you that this week we start a cryptocurrency mining project. You can find it on www.click.sk. I think it's better in Slovak to understand. It is a simple web application where you can choose charity project. You click on it and push the button, and this web application starts mining cryptocurrency for charity which you choose. Now let me introduce Zuzka, which is director of HubHub.
Director, not the director, but
yeah.
Almost.
Oh, okay.
Getting there.
What is this place where we meet? There you can tell some.
Yeah, so I don't think I'm going to use this just in case. So welcome everyone to HubHub. I think that some of you have already been here. For those who have not, I'm very happy to have you here. HubHub is an international network of co-working spaces, but we do not only want to provide, a pretty office space, but we want to fill the space with some meaningful content. And meaningful content definitely means a lot of tech and innovation topics such as blockchain and fintech. And that makes me super happy to have a guest such as Alejandro here tonight and to be working with guys from Blockchain Slovakia.
Special guest for this meetup. It is Alejandro from Blockchain project Aeternity. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much. And stage is yours.
I would take the microphone. I think I'm loud enough, and I talk in significant events. So thank you very much again. My name is Alejandro. I represent the company, the corporation Aeternity, which is one of the largest projects, one of the largest blockchains that exist out there. And the meaning of this talk is for you to understand what are smart contracts overall, and how do you use the different sets or systems that they collaborate, that integrate with smart contracts. The most visible ones being state channels, oracles, or decentralized oracles in prediction markets, and what we call identity management system, a naming system. So instead of you having one identity within a digital economy and a digital world, you would be able to have multiple digital identities. So if we go back a little bit to understand what is Aeternity, it is to understand what was blockchain. So blockchain was created as a decentralized form of the internet, a new kind of global system that tries to integrate the best of the previous system, but make it more decentralized, make it more accessible for people that do not have that kind of access in accessing the funds, in synchronizing the wishes and desires, and in putting companies and startups to build this project on top of Aeternity, on top of Neo, on top of EOS, on top of different blockchain protocols, that each one had different characteristics, and each one of them had different ways that would be more useful for one business than another business. So one of the problems that exist in blockchain as an ecosystem is the speed of transaction, what we call as scalability, meaning within Bitcoin, until this year or last year, you were only able to process 8 transactions per second. With Ethereum, you would be able to transact 12 transactions per second. And a very fast cryptocurrency like Dash, you would be able to create 56 transactions per second. A transaction as a contract, a transaction as an agreement, a transaction as a financial monetary way to send some value, some money, some digital asset from one place to the other, but a transaction also in terms of ownership. Who owns your data? Who owns your intellectual property? who owns your copyrights, if you work in music or in art, who actually owns that information, and how quickly can you transfund it or can you trespass it from one place to another. And for that, that is the speed of transaction. That is the scalability problem that does not allow blockchain as an ecosystem to grow as quickly as we could. Mass adoption and people in everyday life, they ask, where is a practical use case? Where is the real, like, one visible project or product, one startup or company, one physical thing that I can relate and I can understand, okay, there's this thing that is called the blockchain, but I can use it for this practical level, and outside of Bitcoin and Dash and kind of like sending money, it is difficult to find one practical use. And the difficulty comes because the protocols are not ready, and they're largely not ready because they're very difficult to create everyday quick transactions. If you compare 10 transactions per second against Visa, that they equate 25,000 transactions per second. So the cryptocurrencies at the moment, we are here, and MasterCard, Amex, and all these transnational corporations, they're miles, 10 against 25,000. Until we don't reach this gap, there is very little applications and very real use case applications that you can see in your smartphones, that you can see in the city, that you can have a business that can actually prove that something existed upon a certain period and time. So what is the difference between different models of scaling this? Instead of making it 10 transactions or 50 transactions, make them to have thousands or hundreds of thousands of transactions. In Bitcoin and Ethereum, it exists what we call Lightning, and it also exists Raiden, right? Within us, we develop a different system that is called the Cuckoo cycle. And it involves that transactions would go in parallel. How exists in blockchain, in Bitcoin and in Ethereum and most of the keychains, is that you need to create a block and wait 10 minutes until that block is full, and it's as if it would be transportation or a car, it goes. And then the next, you fill it, and the next one goes. You fill it, the next one goes. This is very slow. This takes 10 minutes. In just a few months ago, it could take hours, and in some cases it could even take days. We believe that one of the solutions is if you would put them in parallel. So instead of going on a horizontal way, you could put them on a vertical way, and every transaction would do this. And this is on an almost computational basis unlimited if you create it in a different way. It is only limited by bandwidth, and it is only limited, according to some testnets, we could even have up to 1 million transactions. But once you create a transaction, what does it work for? Or could you give us like some practical examples of what has been built, or what has been created, or what is being at least created? And that is that these state channels, instead of carrying, yes, they carry money, but they carry a smart contract. And a smart contract is the synchronization of all the wishes and desires that one person can have or that one person can need within a company or a service provider, a startup that is willing to satisfy this process. One example is Airbnb. Imagine that you would like to have your own, that as you travel, you would like to have your own same house built on the same way. Those are dozens or even hundreds of transactions that you would have to make. How does the wall look like? What is the color? What is the food that is in your fridge? Which kind of beverages do you use? Which kind of shampoo and what quality do you have in your bathroom? How many windows does it usually have? Why do they need to be arranged in certain ways? Would you need it for this to be business-oriented or more family-oriented? Would you like to have special materials for the kids? And as someone that would be traveling across different countries, staying different days, creating all of these agreements between multiple parties that would try to provide you the same service as living in your own house. When Slovakians go to move to Argentina, and then they go to Mexico, and then they go to Paraguay, and then they go to the United States, and having a very similar experience would be used by these automated machines that are called the smart contracts. If you add that even to technologies like driverless cars and automated vehicles, those driverless cars could actually deliver that kind of information, and that they can create those Airbnbs that would be called and created for the future. Another way of understanding smart contracts is if you would compare it with Apple or with Amazon. So Amazon started simply as a supply chain delivery that would try to bring products and services to your house. But from this idea, you started creating Audible for listening to music. And you started creating Fresh, so you would have vegetables in your house. And you started creating Amazon Web Services that provides you a cloud service. So it's one company that initiated with one idea, and it spread and multiplies within the same reaches. Or if you take Apple, for instance, or IBM, they were only creating technology, and 20 years ago, concentrated in laptops. But then the iPod came, and then the smartphone came, and then Google Home came as a speaker. And then they correlated all of their different brands within the name or brand of Apple. And that is because inside, they have inside features that, for example, Microsoft doesn't have. And that Sony, to a large extent, doesn't have. Because for you to use Apple, you would be able to buy the whole set of services that goes from the smartphone, that goes from the voice recognition, that goes to your smartphone, and goes to your laptop. It gets interconnected with appme.com. All of the services that exist, they're inbuilt within one platform that differentiates Apple from Microsoft. If you understand how does Apple create it, they have these inbuilt features that make it simple, easy, accessible, and affordable for anyone to use on a large scale. So as they created this kind of products and services 5 years ago or 10 years ago, within the next 5 years and within the next 10 years, there's going to be other kinds of products. Some of them are called, what I mentioned before, oracles, naming systems, and this kind of smart contracts. So I'll give some examples of what is an oracle. I'll try not to get so specific on technical details, but oracles are used to understand what is real-time data happens. So your company and your services provide services according to the elections, according to who won the game, according to what is the weather outside. And if you understand the weather, you can say, if we believe that it's going to be raining within the next 30 minutes, we would call a lot of Ubers so the price decreases and everyone in this room is able to get a Uber. If we understand from the electoral or from the sports perspective, you would see that if a local team won, let's say Slovakia national team won against Austria or against Hungary or against a big country, it is more likely that people would go to a pub. So they would send a lot of messages to everyone in Slovakia that have worked as waiters, telling them we're needing more people in the pubs and in the bars because Slovakia won, and it's very likely that everyone would stay more time in the bar or would go to the bar. Another way of understanding is if the electoral system would affect the geopolitical financial market. So instead of having a human understanding and creating all that information, absorbing all that information, a system based on algorithms would predict how would the financial markets be better or worse in one country according to crowdsourced intelligence that one individual, one mind cannot hold or cannot process. but a set of hundreds of thousands of nodes of computers of electricity power would be able to analyze the whole data and make a prediction of how would it be utilized. These oracles also create prediction markets. And a prediction market is useful in marketing and in customer acquisition and in customer identification. So someone would ask you, how much would you pay for this cellular phone? And you have 3 different ways of answering it. So in a prediction market, you would go binary. Would you buy this phone for 500 pounds? Yes or no? And then you vote yes or no. What would be the price of a phone in Slovakia? For me, that I'm not from Slovakia and I don't understand Central Europe. Is this worth 500 pounds, 600, 700, 800, 1,000? What is the price? And more importantly, it would give you a range of you telling me, I believe that it's approximately between 400 and 600, or 500 and 700, or 800 and 1,000 and 1,000, whatever. And for that, you would get receipts. And it would be able for international companies to understand what is the local market. Instead of hiring a marketing agency or a marketing organization, a company, to tell you how does the Slovakian people actually behave? What is their power, their purchasing power within the city? Who am I speaking if it's only about Slovakians? And I just want to target young people who come to this kind of events in Hub Hub. Or I want to target women who are in pregnancy and who needs this specific product or service. So to understand the specific cohort in marketing, the specific group, the age, the nationality, the income, and their expectations, all of those marketing studies, a prediction market. That's why it's called prediction. We anticipate what is going to be the future. We anticipate not on the base or the basis of one company or one organization. It could be a great organization, but hundreds of people, thousands of people that you would be asking them these questions, and in a crowdsourced way, they would give you an answer. Does it sound logical? More or less? Did I speak too fast?
Great.
I can speak faster, don't worry. So these are some of the ideas or some of the possible applications that will be built eventually within the next year, 2 years, or 5 years. That is not digestible for people to understand, as there are very little practical applications of blockchain. An analog that I create is if you go back 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and somebody would ask you, what is the internet and what is its use? And you would say, well, the internet, it creates social media. But 30 years ago, there was no Facebook or no Tinder, there was no Twitter, there was no Instagram, there was no Snapchat. So you wouldn't be able even to anticipate what is going to be the future. Or somebody tells you, well, the internet is going to create emails. And you'd say, like, you mean like a mail, like a physical package? Yeah, but it's going to be digital. How can you actually do that? And I don't believe that is the future, by the way. I don't think that anyone would be able to use emails if you go back 30 years ago. And if you would be asking, or would be saying, you know, the internet can create search engines like Google or Yahoo. And people say, why do you need those things if you already have newspapers and physical assets? So those things that 30 years ago you could not anticipate are being built at the moment upon a decentralized network that provides incentive for people to build things, to get wealthy, to get rich, and those people that have been financially excluded by the financial, the political, and the national legislations, people who live in Syria and in Afghanistan, in Venezuela, in North Korea, which do not have the possibility to transact or to create an agreement with people from Germany or from Europe, are now building these dApps, these startups. A startup in the blockchain world is called a decentralized application. Very simple. People who work in this building, it's a startups. If you work in artificial intelligence or machine learning or the Internet of Things or telecommunications, you're likely a startup. Within the blockchain world, you would be called a DApp, or decentralized application. Decentralized application, because unlike in the internet, you would be working on a decentralized network and on a decentralized protocol. So this not only creates an enormous amount of people that want to become entrepreneurs, but it provides a lot of financial inclusion for people that did not have the possibility to create this kind of business and small organizations and startups, because they believed that nobody would be funding them. They believed that it was going to be too complicated on a legal basis, on going with the regulations, the legislations, the local authorities, the international authorities, the tax system, the money laundering, the know your customer, the anti-terrorism laws, all of this massive government infrastructure. It gets significantly reduced quicker and easier for anyone to start having an idea, and that idea getting money. It's not important having an idea. Anyone can have an idea. Anyone can have an opinion. Make that idea with a business plan, find the right people, and make those people to pay for your idea, test it on the market, and if it's a good idea, you can become wealthy. It's simple. It sounds simple. For those that have been working, and me as a former political journalist, I decided to mutate, and having no business background, I failed finance twice, I failed mathematics a number of times also, and I didn't have a technology or technical background, but understanding that it is so easy and so quick to register and create a DApp or a blockchain, I decided to jump in full-time for being a political journalist with a microphone, on a radio, on a television, writing articles, interviewing people, and going into entrepreneurship, because it's really, really, really easy. And it does not require going to the government or to UNESCO or European Union and asking them for funds, saying, I have an idea, nobody is buying them. Maybe your idea is worthless. Maybe your idea, it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea because people don't want to buy it. Within blockchain and this decentralized applications, it is very easy to use. It is very quick, it is very simple, and it's very doable. And how is it doable? It is doable, and I'll speak about how do we, by having a great technology, decide to help people, and how people in this room and people in Slovakia can actually profit by having an idea and by trying to match it with capital, with money. And for that, we have created 3 things for 3 different people. Those who want to learn, but they don't have enough information. We created an educational foundation where we actually not only go out and give this kind of talks for free, public, accessible for everyone, but also we provide kits of information. So you have the technical, the legal, and the financial information on how to actually create a business. Not about how do you create a business on the real world, and not how do you create like a kebab shop upstairs or a traditional VC investment. No. How do you create a blockchain application? That is the idea. How through arts, how through music, how does people in the creative designing industries can profit by understanding this technology? Once those people already know a little bit about the technology, we want to create, and we created, an incubator fund. This hub, it's a co-working space. In many places, I would imagine probably half of Latin American cities, likely half of Arab and Middle Eastern and African cities, they might not even understand what is a co-working space. They don't have clarity of what is the importance of this physical, peer-to-peer human interaction. Someone works in this in marketing and the other one is a financier and they help each other. So we built the House of Blockchain. We have 2 physical spaces in Liechtenstein and in Bulgaria, in Sofia, where people like you, is she here? Because she's gonna hate me. She left. Thank you very much. And I hope this is not recorded by anyone. Oh shit. We provide free office space, like HubHub does, or like WeWork does, but in Liechtenstein. So people can go there, and in a building that has the same chairs and the same tables, people who are oriented towards blockchain, they physically integrate. They physically build something. And they have consultancy. And on the third area, not only do you understand, and not only you're building something, you have a minimum viable product, you have a proof of concept, probably you're kind of like launching alpha or before beta, but we actually provide venture capital funding. We believe that if a good startup can actually raise some money, they just need to get some help. So we give up to 250K, 250,000 euros per startup, plus the co-working space, plus the mentorship, and plus the publicity and technical support of building the project on top of Aeternity. So these are three things of how come people can stop only thinking and dreaming and wanting and desiring and expecting that one day, probably in a year or 5 years or however is your time frame, but actually you have something and someone that is in front of you that knows some things about blockchain, or many things, and if you have that idea, doesn't matter how early stage it is, we can help you develop it and create until you launch a real product. Whether it's an ICO, whether it's not an ICO, whether you sell that, you build a company and you sell it, there's different ways on how can you become an entrepreneur. Understanding that is not the money that's going to come from Slovakia, and not the money that is going to come from Europe or the European Union or your favorite governments, but it's going to be a very, very, very decentralized group of people, most of them who you don't know, most of them who you have never spoken or even cared about your life. But if they see that your idea has a real feasibility, you can build and you can create something different on top of it. For this is also worth it analyzing if there's other projects that have all this amount of features. So there are a few of them in general. One of the important things is, it might get too technical, but it is what is the governance and consensus mechanism, and what are the programming languages that they are written in. So the programming languages is a way of you communicating with a machine, of providing order and instructions so they create logic. So if I drop a ball in this direction, I know, or I would expect that the ball would go for 5 seconds upon certain speed, according to gravity and according to resistance. That is called logic as an engineer. And the different programming languages, you have JavaScript, C++, Erlang, Java, multiples. What makes different most of them is if they're low level or high level. High level, or HTML, or the newest ones for the last 20 years or 15 years, differ because of its complexity. The one that we utilize, called Erlang, it's a low level, highly difficult, highly strong, almost immutable for high-speed trading. It's one that is popular. It's created by Ericsson, therefore Erlang, Ericsson language, built in 1986, if I'm not mistaken. And they needed to have immediate transactions, for example, in the London Stock Exchange or the New York Stock Exchange markets. They couldn't afford that the electricity would go down for 1 minute. How we measure electricity is in terms of nights. So there is our possibility, or our accuracy is 99% of the time. You might think that's something very high. That means that one day, at least, one day out of 100, Google doesn't work, and Amazon doesn't work, or the metro in here, and the transportation system, it doesn't work one day out of 100 days. How much millions or billions of dollars is any company losing if they stop working for 1 day, or for 1 minute, or for 10 minutes? How many losses does Amazon has on a global scale if Amazon cannot process the payments in 10 minutes every day? 1 minute every day. Millions, probably billions of dollars. So for that high-speed trading, you need to create very strong tubes, an architecture that is built upon literally strong metal that is almost impossible to change or modify. And upon that architecture, if it's well built, you would be able just to scale and scale and scale, and you can dance, you can create a ballet. If this building is very strong, you can do as many things as you want. Push it, you can kick it, do this, you can kick it in here, if it's strong enough. And that is the difference between a low level and a high level. Low level are very difficult to utilize. And you need to have real expertise. In both you need to have your real expertise, but it's more scarce, like C++ or C# or Erlang. They're very scarce. You would have 20 developers of JavaScript for everyone that uses Erlang, even more, 50, even more. I don't know, like it's very difficult. And the second part is what we call the consensus algorithm, meaning when there's this kind of contracts or smart contracts and agreements and transactions and ownership and intellectual property, any exchange of information or communication, it needs to be validated by something. So if I use WhatsApp and I send you a message between these two people in here, they need to know that if he said Dabaru Paratutski, which is perfect Slovak, right? Of course, what do you mean? He actually, the other end actually resells the Garatu Paratutski, and it's not like some other gibberish. It is precise. It is the same one. When you send money from one place to the other, you actually pay the exact amount. If you send $100, it's not $1,000, and it's not $10, and it's not $1. If you just eliminate a zero, it can get problematic. So how do we verify? This kind of verifications exist on centralized systems. You trust Amazon, and you trust Visa, and you trust government that regulates the banks and the visas to understand that you have purity. In a decentralized system, you do not have those governments, those visas, those central banks, or those private companies, because you have dApps. And we use other forms. So instead of one organization, everyone in the organization, instead of asking you individually, everyone in the room would validate a transaction. I will give you an example. Am I holding a cow in my hand? No, you're holding a phone. Am I a white Chinese tall woman? No, you look like a Mexican man. Am I speaking Russian? No, you're actually speaking English with a Mexican accent. So for you to validate, there could be people in this room that disagree with this, that might want to change the information, that would profit from creating fraud. There might be people that might want to create what is called double spending. So if the transaction comes from here to here, maybe those guys in there, they want to steal it. So all of you guys are legitimate, but the guy that just ended up in there, you know, he's actually trying to get away with more. He's trying to get away with the funds. He's taller than us, so you know, it might be complicated to physically stop them. But he might, that area in there, might want to do it. So the way to validate it is by using different consensus algorithms. And what we use, the cuckoo cycle, is a combination between proof of work and proof of stake. You also have the centralized proof of stake. You have hash graphs. You have within hash graphs directed as cyclical graphs, like Tangle, that is within IOTA. You have the Byzantine protocol They can be federated or not. There are multiple ways. Proof of work, exchange electricity. Proof of stake, exchange digital coins. Decentralized proof of stake elects one representative, him, to vote on behalf of everyone. Hashgraph creates a gossip mechanism where he would tell him and him and him and him and him and him and him what actually happened in a gossip way, quickly, very, very quickly. On the Byzantine model, you would create, it's not the girlfriend, not the official. Within the Byzantine model, you would you would have, let's say, out of 9 generals, the first 5 that moves would be followed by the rest of the 4. It's more of a control. It's more of a centralized version of it. It eliminates many of the times what is called 51 attack, or 67% attack, or vector attacks, or civil attacks. So civil attack is when people in this area, they claim to have another identity. So the gentleman in here, he could say, well, if everyone has a vote in here, according to your name, he would lie and he'd say, my name is actually Luis Miguel. And he would create a civil to have double spending, to have a double vote. So if these people in here vote on a 2 times, or 3 times, or 4 times, even if there are only 5 in here, and you're 20 in here, if they vote 5 times, you would have 25 votes against 20 votes. This kind of impersonification or usurpation of identity exists. One of the quickest and easiest way to stop this impersonification is if you use a hybrid. Not only one of them, and that's how Aeternity differentiates from many or almost many other of the products. They only have one. But we have 2. We have the cuckoo cycle. We have proof of work, and we have proof of stake. Both of them, some of them for consensus, and some of them for mining. And a way of creating this is within the idea that the world should be decentralized. And this is how I'll end the talk. We have multiple partnerships. I have multiple friends and multiple organizations that want to see this radical evolution of entrepreneurship, a very aggressive decentralization against those systems of hierarchy that does not allow the individual to do whatever they want without hurting someone else. That is not only an entrepreneurial vision, but it has to do a lot with how this economy is concentrated within the hands of those who believe that they represent, or those who believe that can run better your finances and your life and your personality and your identity and your lifestyle better than the rest. What it creates is free markets. People are afraid of free markets, maybe because their ideas are worthless. Maybe because they know that if they go out and they try looking for money, they're never going to get anything. So they go and look for government handouts. They say that they represent whatever kind of idea. They cannot have what they cannot find people who validate and create this idea, so they keep going and trying for governments. That's more or less how the system works within a welfare state, and with what many people would call an authoritarian state against your personal life and your personal freedom. So for people that would like to become entrepreneurs and to understand better technologies, just approach me afterwards or add me up in LinkedIn. My name is Julio Alejandro. Alejandro like Lady Gaga, and Julio, listen, that's it. Listen, no. And Julio, like the month of July, just in Spanish, from Mexican origin. So Julio Alejandro, I'm in pretty much all social media, and just come afterwards, and I'll be happy to take some questions, some comments, some Bitcoins if you want to throw them at me as well. Feel free to do so. And on behalf of Aeternity and the representation, I thank you very much for coming. So thank you very much.
Now is the place for discussion or for your questions, if you had some.
So how many transactions can the blockchain do per 1 second, or I don't know what time period you said 1 million, or?
It goes on the millions. So the difference between most of the blockchains is that the blockchain is an on-chain or a key chain. You can get to 100 of them. Off-chain, using the state channel that I mentioned, can go hundreds of thousands or millions.
Like you are updating the state of the channel off-chain, and when nobody is cheating, you just write the final state when you finish the transaction.
Every 30 seconds or every 20 seconds, that is correct. So what happens if someone tries to do the impersonification? If Luis Miguel comes up and the group of Luis Migueles, they say, well, they want to alter the originality of the transaction. You guys would have a dispute. You guys would try to get into an agreement because they're lying. So when a dispute comes up, it goes on the blockchain. And that is what differentiates us from the rest of the blockchains, because otherwise you would have to wait those 10 minutes on Bitcoin, or 20 minutes or 30 minutes for microtransactions. So once you get out of the taxi, you have to wait 30 minutes until you can actually send the payment or receive the payment, which is not efficient under any circumstances.
When you have dispute.
When you have disputes. If you put it off-chain on the state channels, they go unlimited, virtually unlimited, until bandwidth. How much is bandwidth? If you put it within, let's say, a poor country or a poor region in Mexico with another poor region in Africa, they can be a few thousands of them, or tens of the thousands of them. If you transact within my office, WeWork in London, and the equivalent in Tokyo, highly advanced and speedy region, you can have multiple millions of them. So it depends on bandwidth. It does not depend on the size of the block or the speed of the block.
Like when you want to write the initial contract, not the update, the update of the state, you still will have to use significant amount of the block space. Or the 1 million was only for the updates, or like?
The volume does not affect the speed of the transaction.
I know, but you want to write the initial contract on the blockchain, not the update the state, and what's the number for that? Or I think it should be bit lower.
I mean, it's similar to Lightning Network.
Right.
Things you're saying.
Yeah, so you're all right. So you initiate a contract off-chain also.
Yes. And if there's no dispute, like the state channel closes after a certain period, and it just keeps being private. So that information has been, unlike Bitcoin, where everything is public, open, accessible, the private information would remain between the two parties. Meaning you could put your healthcare record, or if you have HIV or cancer, and it's sensitive information that should not be public, that you don't want it to be public, it would remain only between the two parties within a privacy feature.
Actually, I have the same question.
Same question.
I read in the Aeternity page that when the mainnet launches, there already will be some built-in dApps. What will be they about?
Yeah. One of them, so we have around 10, 20 at the moment. Last year we created a competition for people that wanted to build them, and we had 5 winners. One of them, it's controversial because if I say one of them and I mention the other one, they complain. But one that I like, it's about trust. So it's about finding people in your city to go out clubbing, to a restaurant, or to a bar. So you would put the money let's say that we like each other and we actually want to go to a club. But I know that this guy, at 1 a.m., he gets really drunk, he never pays the bill.
That's true, yeah.
Any correlation with reality, you know, it's mere coincidence. Or, and if you're traveling and if you don't have that trust within someone else, you might not be inclined of creating common activities like traveling, or like going to another city, if you don't know that the person would actually pay for those bills. So what it creates is a smart contract. So if you're going to travel from here to Vienna, and then you're going to go clubbing in Vienna, and you're going to sleep in a hotel in Vienna, and then share common expenses, those common expenses would be done within a smart contract that would automatically take the money of you.
And how do I access the text? Through a mobile phone? Or
Through your mobile phone, through a laptop. So it's DAEPS, so it's DAEPS. We just put an E in between, and we have different websites. So Aeternity has Aeternity News, and we create like one very technical part, almost only for developers, but also for, and we have one for everyday citizens that want to understand more practical, like more in an accessible way. It's a smart contract written by our PR agency. We have a PR agency, Watchmen. We work with Lumi as well. So we provide this educational kits. So people say, like, just if you send anyone in here and send me an email and say, you know, I didn't understand with precision, or I want to have more information about consensus algorithms in this Google cycle, I didn't get it. And we have like lists, like libraries, updated every few months of the newest developments, and why do we believe that one or the other is better.
so what will be the Eternity tokens used for like payments in these smart contracts?
Yeah.
It's like when I send ERC20 token, like Ether, for example, and I need to pay some fee.
Mm-hmm.
Will this be only for the fee, or will it be used also for other transactions?
Only for the fee. And the fee could be better understood if you see like the car, and you need to put gasoline or fuel in the car, and that gasoline is what
Around the
automates,
smart contract on the Eternity.
which are called
I need
EONs.
to have,
They're called AEONs.
So if you, for example, would like to use the application you told about, you need to exchange for Eternity tokens,
Yes.
and then you can transact and put money in Eternity tokens, right?
Yes.
You can't put bitcoins in and pay the transaction in Eternity tokens.
So not within this months, and I cannot give a specific time frame, but we would partner with organizations similar to Shapeshift, meaning even if you only have Dash or Litecoin, and you don't even have Ethereum or Bitcoin, like whatever kind of coin, you would translate it into EONs on an almost instant cycle, or what is called an atomic swap. This does not exist at the moment. This is not even being built at the moment, but within the next months, it's something that we get planned. So whatever kind of currency that you have, so we believe that we have the best technology, period. We believe that our technology would outcompete the rest of the other applications, and people on a free market, on an open source model, with rational people that would analyze Eternity with the others, and they would choose Eternity. So we're already building everything, as we already know or believe, that we have a better technology than the rest of them. We didn't do a lot of marketing campaign until very few months ago, very few weeks ago actually. We were considered to be a deep tech company, meaning a bunch of developers. We have like 36 developers, 20 of them are core, around 40 of them, they're part-time. We're about 100 people, globally distributed. And we have an ambassador program, which David Stancil is sort of our biggest guy in here. Many or most of you guys know David Stancil. this ambassador program, human cannot scale. I cannot be in multiple cities at the same time, physically speaking. But David Stansel will be giving talks on behalf of Aeternity. And such, those, like the biggest, like one of the biggest project, Big Nation, you've heard of it, the leading ambassador, the #1 ambassador, he would become like our, probably like the second or the third one. Because we have some of the strongest connections with other very, very disruptive technology companies. So Big Nation, I'm a member of their advisory board. I think I'm not sure if the only one, but out of the 9 people, I'm one of the most involved into blockchain. Seasteading Institute, those cities that are being created on the French Polynesia, kind of like Water World, we just co-hosted an event a few weeks ago that I co-hosted with them in the Hilton Hotel in London. Liberland, I just went to their headquarters 2 months ago and met with the president, gave a talk with them, with the Startup Society, and organizations that look a lot for privacy, like Parallel and Polis. We have really good relations. I personally, from the people of Prague, I know them well. I've been invited to their Hacker Congress. I've given webinars with them. So we look for these very, very unconventional organizations that not only talk, we don't care about talking. Within the last 2 weeks, I went to the European Parliament, to United Nations in Vienna, to GlovSec. I was the keynote speaker here of blockchain. And we don't do policy making or policy analysis or the debate of ideas. We don't care about an idea if it doesn't have money, or if it doesn't get capital. So we build things. We really, really, really focus on building things.
Yeah.
And the incubators you arrange nowadays, they are for projects based on your platform or any version?
No, they need to be on our platform. That's the whole idea. They need to be on Aeternity, and they receive, it's an incubator, but it's a consultancy. So we provide mentorship, guidance, design, implementation, so the product scale quickly. It's kind of like an accelerator, it's an incubator, and it's very, very focused. It's only focused on blockchain and Aeternity blockchain. And we already have the building. It was actually inaugurated by the Prime Minister of Liechtenstein, so the head of state, or equivalent of the president. He came to our inauguration and he gave a speech. He was taking photos with all of us, and he thanked us because we're the largest company in that jurisdiction. And from Central European and Eastern Europeans, we're one of the largest ones. I don't want to say because I don't have certainty, but if I would have to, out of everything, I've been in the space for like 3 years, and I was a private consultant before. I used to say that Aeternity was the largest one from the Germanic world, and from Eastern European, so we're the largest one in here.
I have a question. What is the nearest next development steps for Aeternity? Some upgrades you plan? Or?
Yeah, so we're in testnet at the moment, which means, there's a cycle of creation of a product. It's usually 6 parts. So you have an idea, proof of concept, which is a white paper. You create a minimum viable product with a demonstration. You launch it in what is called alpha for a small group of people. You then create it on a larger scale with beta, and then you go for production mode. Like 90% of the blockchains, they're kind of like somewhere in here, and arguably they would never even get to the middle. We're already in stage 5 out of 6, meaning that we will go into the mainnet, also called production mode or live mode, within the next weeks. So a few months, it's scheduled for Q2, and that would create us actually a public blockchain, just like Ethereum. So from all of the platforms that you have, Litecoin or Dash or Bitcoin, those are platforms that are not are protocols for only financial transactions. You cannot build an application on top of it. You cannot build a business, an enterprise, a startup. You cannot build anything on top of Bitcoin. Once with Aeternity, we would be Ethereum, but Ethereum on steroids. Ethereum with programming languages, that is something also important. Because it is very difficult to interconnect different SDKs or software development kits. So if you want to have a naming system, an oracle, a state channel, and a smart contract, God bless you, because they're written in different languages, in multiple, or even worse, you have to build them yourself, right? So there are no developer tools, there's no tools. The tool is something that you create upon repetition of something. Meaning you have to create the same, you have to move your feet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like so many times that you build a way of saying, okay, what if I just jump from here to here? And this is kind of like a tool, just like in very simple terms. And for you to create that tool, God help you, you're a developer. Like, it's gonna take you months for a team to create one tool, and then interconnect them and create all this mess. It's Microsoft. It's like, it doesn't work, it's fucked up, it doesn't work. We're like Apple, so everything is interconnected. The three of them are interconnected within 2 languages that we built, even for you to be easier. So they're called Sophia and Varna. They're programming languages. Like, people create, like, if you heard or if you're familiar as to what is JavaScript or C++, those are languages that are created, like Esperanto. For you to create a language, it's difficult as hell. We built not 1, but we built 2. So they're easier for anyone to use.
How is it comparable to Solidity?
Sophia comes from the ML language, from machine learning. And by coming from machine learning, it's very quick to test and adapt itself. So when you put the information and money on a state channel, you need to verify the quickest and the easiest that if there's a bug, there's a problem, it could be solved in a quicker way. Sophia, by being part of this family, it's very quick to test and to validate that the information is reliable.
What are general conditions for the project to use your platform? I'm sorry, I just first time heard today about your platform.
Sure.
Some simple questions.
No, all questions are welcome. So we're based on a principle approach, meaning as long as we believe that it's fair, that it's ethical, that it's desirable, that you're not doing anything extremely dangerous or criminal, you could be accepted into our project. It's also worth noticing that the creators of the technology are not responsible for its use. And then by being open source, regardless if it's proprietary or on license or enterprise or anything, by it being open source, anyone can use the technology. So it's like if someone actually creates a knife and people use this knife for whatever kind of thing. So people use this knife for this, but they can use this knife for anything. I'm Mexican and I know I look scared, but
In the future, it will be possible to make some ICO on your platform?
So at the moment we're focusing within launching the features. After that, we'll see.
Is ERC20 compatible? The contracts which are already now
they are being mutated and migrated.
So like you have some tool to migrate them?
Maybe. Honestly, I don't know.
Oh, but you are the one who support the network.
No. Yes. No. So our developers are the ones that create the network. As there are 50 developers, theoretically it's centralized, not theoretically. There's some level of centralization. Me, as being a public speaker and representing it, it's also centralized in some way, maybe. We need to create a system where human interaction becomes obsolete. So the founder and the core team and me will only have a very limited say against what the community says. Most of the projects, not most, virtually all of the projects, 95% of the blockchain or cryptocurrencies or whatever projects, they run almost exactly the same as Apple or Microsoft or any company, Coca-Cola, Shell, whatever you put on there. Why? Because they're based in the jurisdiction. They have to obey the laws. They have to go within AML, KYC, terrorism laws. They have to pay taxes. They need to have a board of directors. They need to have advisors. They work exactly the same as any organization. How we were going to be different is that within our ambassador program, we're going to develop into a universe. And a universe means that the technology would be regulated by the own ecosystem, not by whatever regulators or governments or dumb people try to tell us. But the community would have tasks, and Aeternity universe would have tasks, like would have jobs, would have tasks to do in technical implementation, but they would also guide for moral and ethical codes. And when there's a negative case, like something of a group of people that are using it in very negative purposes, us as a community would create systems to try to stop it, to mitigate it, to attack it, to decrease it, to modify it, to change it in a way that it doesn't affect other people, that it doesn't create externalities. So when people and governments, and this is what I told them to LOPSEC, is we need to regulate you. And I just laughed and I said, like, we're already regulated. By whom? By ourselves. And who's accountable? The people. What do you mean the people? Yeah, the people that actually build things, not that speak about things. So the people that actually code, the people that haven't been involved, the people that invest, that they have a stake. And it's giving privacy and democracy back, not to the ones that claim to be representing you, like the European Parliament, but actually the individuals that actually contribute to the development of this technology. So a cryptocurrency needs to be decentralized, and hopefully Aeternity would be so decentralized that us as a core team will not be able to stop anything. We will not be able even to stop or modify anything, because the power of the community is going to be so big, and the distribution of tax is going to be so decentralized and distributed that us, which is going to be appearing as the founders and the people who created the movement, but it's not there. Like there cannot be concentration of power. Concentration of power always leads to negative things. Never under any circumstance. I'm based here. I just realized that I'm in Bratislava. 25 years ago, they put your wall because of a political opinion. Don't let, again, those people put you another wall that does not let you travel to Vienna under any circumstances. Centralization of power is bad, always.
You spoke about the tasks and projects that will be distributed to the community. Who will create tasks?
The community.
So they will create tasks, and they will vote, and they will build on them, yeah? So it will not be US development team, you will create a task and then anybody can work on it.
No.
That's centralization then.
There is an architecture, but it has not been designed. It is created upon a spontaneous, organic, unregulated, artificial order. So when we started the ambassador program a month ago, it already changed. And I'm the global ambassador, I'm the head, the big guy. And it already changed. Because when you concentrate the information within that mind, doesn't matter how smart is that person, the market always knows better. And the market always moves faster. And the market will always dictate quicker than that person. And I'm the head, I'm the director, I'm the global ambassador, like in charge of all the projects. So myself, I don't even know exactly how this is going to evolve. If you put a politician and a bureaucrat trying to tell you, well, I believe that this is going to be the future, you're suicidal, you're mad. Like the community itself, we cannot anticipate that. If people understand that the human mind is limited and the crowdsourced intelligence is unlimited, we need to trust the markets and the people. as long as you follow that idea, I think that you can grow a lot.
Okay. You don't have any
Maybe
question?
another question. What about the capacity of the lab, of the incubator? What you mentioned? How many projects are, let's say, now under your roof, or how many people are interested in running projects on your platform? I mean, globally. I mean, tens, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands, or just to, you know.
About 100. So one of the differences between us and Ethereum or any other platform is that we have a governance system, as I said before. We're self-regulated, meaning we audit and vet the good projects from the shed coins and the scam coins and the stupid projects. So if you want to build a shedful project, we're not going to validate it. We're not going to vet you. We're not going to allow you, or well, we cannot really stop you, but you're not going to be endorsed by us. So instead of having, I read, I don't want to name it, but they said they have 500 projects ongoing, and that is absolute. How do I say this within like nice words? Like that's fucking bullshit. Like it's incredible the level of magnanimity, of abuse, of misperception, of lie, and of stupidity that other projects say in terms of we have 500 applications that are being built upon us. Fuck you, like that's impossible. Ethereum has 880. Neo has 39. We have 5 of them registered. Somebody tells you like, oh, we have like 30 of them. No. I mean, how do you validate them? Like, is it only this idea, or does this idea, like in all of this process in here, you can have not 500 but 10,000 of people that submitted an idea, that sent an email. No, that's useless. People that are actually creating something that has been working for at least 6 months, that has gotten some level of funding, that had at least 5 or 6 architects, that they have moved physically to Liechtenstein. Those are paths that tells us, yeah, you're committed, you're honest, you're really trying to get your project ongoing. But just having an idea and sending up a paper, like those projects saying like, oh, in top of our blockchains, you know, we have 500 applications, or even 100 applications. That's way too much. We have around 50 real applications. We have around 100, probably 200 of them that we're kind of like screening. Mm-hmm. And see that I say from 100 to 200, because many of them are just not going to do anything. I would rather keep the good ones and select the good ones instead of putting a lot of numbers that just confuse people.
And what is the process like? I mean, when somebody is interested in just have your opinion, or how can I contact somebody, or simply how can we approach you with some good projects from Slovakia?
You can shake my hand up for the meeting if you want to. And we have Aeternity/ventures.com. Simple. We have websites for everything, and we have kits of information for those different group of people that once they kind of know, but they don't have the technical details. They don't know. They might know how to build a business, but they don't know how to build a blockchain business. They are already having a blockchain business, and they need money for that blockchain business. So whatever stage that you are, we have materials, and we're building even better materials. Because if we don't do it, the other guys are going to do it. So we just might be more honest and direct in saying, you know, this is how we understand it. This is how we recommend you doing it.
So when the dApps will be ready, like, do you plan to implement it to some kind of like Aeternity platform? So like a regular user will, let's say, go to app stores and he will download an Aeternity, and then he will like some kind of like app, and then there he will find like all of the dApps, or will they be standalone and the Eternity thing is only like the blockchain is only a backend for the dApps? Like how do you plan to integrate them within each other?
So at the moment, as I mentioned, there's virtually no real blockchain applications that exists. Probably 1% out of the 99 buzzwords and opportunities that exist in there. One of the biggest problems is that each operating system within a phone, within a smartphone, it needs to have its marketplace. So in Google is Google Play Store, and in Apple is Apple Store. We're actually, unlike many other applications, like we put like 80% of our focus in smartphones. So smartphones would be first, and then laptops and would be second. And smartwatches and other things would eventually come, but we're really focused on phone integration. Because phone integration is what allows to create metadata, and metadata is understanding your lifestyle. With whom are you with, under which conditions, how much hours did you spend in here, with whom did you communicate it, where did he buy you your lunch, how much do you pay for that lunch, where do you, how to create prediction algorithms according to your previous and future behavior, and that information would be largely used with smartphones. So we really focus on smartphones, and to create eventually a Google, Apple, what's that? Apple Store, App Store for dApps. That at the moment it doesn't exist. It is in the plan.
So you want to track all the behavior that the person does in the application, the dApp?
That is like 1984. Yes and no. So how the internet exists at the moment is for you to use a service, like for you to use Facebook or Google or Yahoo, they take away your data, and therefore it's free, but you're paying with your data, with your information, with your likes, with your photos, with places that you go, that you visit, and there's a process of advertisement where some company receives that information and sells you things according to your behavior. That's how the internet works. You can complain, you can say that Facebook and Google are immoral and illegitimate, but there's an alternative. And there is an alternative because you don't control your own data. With blockchain, you control your own data. And you take and you decide to sell that data, but also to withdraw the data and use it in a competing platform. So in Facebook, or those people that have hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter, they cannot migrate them to Facebook, or to LinkedIn, or to YouTube. They're independent, and they're fighting against each other. Within blockchain platforms, like Indoor's one of them, you would be able, that those same number of followers, or of likes, or of photos, of information that you posted, you would be able to withdraw it and to integrate it into a new, into the opposition. So from LinkedIn, you just change to Twitter. And they would say, okay, what gives the incentive for Twitter to accept this information from here? The incentive is that there would be Twitter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and people would choose what is the best Twitter, because now you own your data. You're not a slave of the platforms anymore.
Question?
Could I actually just maybe take the question, just returning back to the concept that you started? That was you explained us about the blogs, and this blog and new blog is being built, and actually that's probably the reason why there was the number of transactions which was restricted. You started with Bitcoin, then was Ethereum, etc. And the story is that I understand the parallelism way, but part of that, whether there is some difference in robustness of the systems, or there must be something else than just they have a different name.
So what are the differences between the blockchains?
Yeah, because for example, for Bitcoin you said it was 8. For Ethereum you said it was 20, 16, something like that. I don't remember. And then another I understand the way of parallelism, but of course parallelism doesn't give you the all part. But you explain that. You just part of it. It's enough for you and for the little. But still, I'm just wondering, because everything in the blockchain is based on the security of the creating blocks, and you can rely on that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the reason why I'm asking you whether there is some difference in the concept of creating the blocks between the platforms.
Yes, so the question of the different blocks. So the blocks usually depend on size and on speed of putting it together and making it forward. Those are processes of governance and of speed. And each blockchain has different ones. I don't have more information about it.
Okay.
Of course I have, but I cannot think about it.
Mm-hmm.
We're asking consumers.
And also, it's not clear to me, but maybe you have the answer for that, because with the Bitcoin, it's being paid by those miners who are receiving, the what they gain in Bitcoins. But for the other blockchain, does it have some community who's just working on that for free, or?
No, it's also for mining.
So they're receiving the tokens as well, right? That's it.
I think Aeternity is also for miners. It's a proof of work and proof of stake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in case of your platform, you are giving out your own tokens for that mining. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the mining, how it works, with most platforms, you need to get a rig, and if you use a computer, it's very energy consuming, and could even damage your internal CPU, and they're called ASIC machines, ASIC, and those are very expensive. It costs you 1,000 even to 5,000 pounds, and that creates a centralization of the network. We in Aeternity are one of the very few ones where you can do mining from your phone. And that is something that we believe that it's going to create a lot of decentralization. So one of the attacks that they make against Bitcoin, and one of the ways that they try to regulate it, is by stopping the farms, large conglomerate farms in China, or by John McAfee, that have hundreds of thousands of rigs. It's kind of like that make a lot of noise and consume a lot of electricity to validate that transaction. So there's a concentration in the network, some level of concentration in the network of Bitcoin in validating transactions because of the concentration of the mining. If everyone in the world has a phone, it stops being decentralized. It stops being centralized. So all of our infrastructure, and something that divides us from me or them, is that they're trying to understand the present and going into the future, migrate them. We're already in the future. We are like one step forward in terms of decentralization. I would say we're like 20 steps forwards in terms of decentralization, from the creation of this community that would make my job obsolete, from the mining that is totally decentralized, from the language that by its creation it's so rigid that it's almost absolutely resilient to attacks, and by the ideology and the people that are associated, that want to use our technology because they know that it's more resilient. Organizations that works with us, they say like we need a high-speed transaction and something that is fast and secure. Like that's one of the words that they use. It's like privacy, secure, oriented, and we encourage people to trust me or to trust the team or to trust the developers. Like they're humans and we have problems. We have corruption, we have stupidity, we have lies. But the code, it's neutral. Just look at the code. That's the only thing that we ask for. Look at the code, compare, and you're going to make a rational decision. That's it. It's very simple. That is real decentralization.
You said that you as owners will not have control what is in the network, but at the same time you said that you will not allow anything illegal go inside. And isn't this a bit contradictory? And then also you said that it should lead to some network where community of people will be able to decide if something wrong or illegal is inside it and remove it. Then how would they do it once something illegal is deep enough in the blockchain, right? Then these three things seems to me a bit contradictory.
So I'll start with there's so many of them that I have to kind of like to organize them. So on the questions that are legitimate or immoral, the question is who can solve those problems on a quicker scale? And there's option A, you let the government and the global organizations and institutions solve them, meaning you're believing or suggesting that the government will know how to code. Good luck. Or you let the people to decide and to solve those problems. Who is more efficient at doing so? That's a philosophical question, and we believe that the people and the startup and the community can do it quicker when there's something really, really negative. And if something is going to be used for whatever kind of purpose, I think it's a lot of process of dedication and a lot of process that if we know that the technology is being used for negative purposes, the users and the consumers might just go with the next network. So we have an incentive of making it clean, honest, reliable. And the second question is, it's related to how we choose jurisdictions. So we're based in Liechtenstein. One of the ones that I personally like the most is Gibraltar, because they're creating and leading the regulation. We still need to be regulated. I wish that regulation would be lower, you know.
Yes, I mean, that's correct, but maybe I didn't understand it completely, but how will you stop something negative going into the network when at the same time you're claiming that you have no control over it? You mean either you have that control or you don't.
So things with every system, every product can be used for multiple purposes. Every technology can be used for whatever.
Miners won't mine it, but like they have to identify something then maybe.
Yeah, I mean, because then you don't have control to stop something illegal going inside network if you don't have control on it.
Yeah.
No, you can have.
I mean, people who use any kind of product, and I made an example with a knife, you can make an example with a car. So cars are used by terrorists and ISIS to kill people. Should you ban cars, or should you establish larger amount of cars, or do something against people who create cars? Or people get motivated to do illegal activities by listening to certain music or video games, or reading poetry or criminal novels. And should those people who read or who create those novels to read, are they or should they be responsible for how people get inspired by those criminal novels? I think it's definitely not. So people that usually see the negative rather than the positive part, kind of like 99% of the time, they never coded, they never built anything. They see the world as a dystopian, Black Mirror, the end of civilization, Terminator happening. And people who work in blockchain, most of them, they have a very positive view of globalization, a very positive view of immigration as well, a very positive view of entrepreneurship and how the economy is a positive game. It's always rational, it's always good for one and the other, otherwise it wouldn't exist. The people who see technology in a negative way, personally, I think they never kind of like built anything in many senses.
I maybe follow up on the question. You will be deciding on what DApps or what smart contracts will be developed on your platform, or it will be totally free and anarchy style?
It will be free for everyone to use, for you to access the incubator and the venture that is regulated by a human, and you will choose the best.
That's the difference. So for incubator, you are the decision makers.
Yeah.
You will decide. for the platform to run the apps is totally